I'm in the camp of firearms, particularly the old black powder types being absolutely fine in a Dungeons & Dragons game. Plus, it's firmly entrenched in the lore of the Forgotten Realms, so let's talk about it. Hello, my name is AJ Pickett, and it's time to grab yourself a tasty beverage. We're about to get deeply nerdy. The development, spread, and popularity of propellant-powered projectile weapons on fantasy worlds is in no way restricted to the same order of historic events that happened on Earth. Dragons, wizards, gods, and so on make that comparison completely meaningless very, very quickly. One can't just gloss over all that stuff and cling to medieval Europe like it's the only possible way firearms could have been, okay? I would much rather spend my time thinking about the sort of weapons Formian ant people from the ultimately lawful outer plane of Mechanus would build for themselves. Regardless of how they came to be though, the form of firearms is always highly functional, and general categories of the intended use of the firearm make it much easier to deal with their wide variety of different sources and the specific details of their mechanisms. A rifle intended for long-range precision shots is going to look similar, regardless of being a flintlock or having a firing pin or requiring a crushing hammer to crack a magical crystal. Officially, gunpowder, or its equivalent in smoke powder, impact crystals, rune glass, dragon dust, or whatever the hell you want to call it, should cost around 35 gold coins per 2 pounds or 0.9 kilograms. Gunpowder is chiefly used to propel a bullet out of the barrel of a pistol, rifle, cannon, or it is formed into a bomb, which in turn may also be fired from a mortar or even a bombard cannon. Gunpowder is sold in small wooden kegs and in water-resistant powder horns. It can also be carried in packets. Setting fire to a container full of gunpowder can cause it to explode, dealing fire damage to creatures within 10 feet of it. 3d6 fire damage for a powder horn and 7d6 for a keg. A successful DC 12 dexterity saving throw halves the damage. Setting fire to an ounce of gunpowder causes it to flare for 1 round, shedding bright light in a 30-foot radius and dim light for an additional 30 feet. Other substances may not react to fire, but may get set off with significant bludgeoning damage or cold or exposure to electricity. In the Forgotten Realms, the most important development and manufacturing of firearms is currently taking place in the island nation of Lantan. Driven by the official state religion, the faith of Gond inexorably advances the technology of the island's many manufacturing and research establishments. When the lore books last recorded all of Lantan's progress, it gave descriptions of the relatively primitive and troublesome matchlock firing weapons. These required a lit wick to be kept dry and slowly smouldering away, with a telltale glow in the darkness, and both ends of the wick kept lit, producing a distinctive smell of wick smoke, which is actually the saltpeter. It's an oxidizer. The wick was gripped by the firing mechanism after the gun was loaded, and a flash pan was primed with powder, and the trigger touched the wick to the powder and fired the gun. Keeping a lit wick going for some guard on duty all day required about a mile of wick, so matchlock technology, while relatively cheap to manufacture, was troublesome to supply and maintain. Plus, it's just not a particularly reliable firing method, prone to danger when restocking powder horns when lit wicks get far too close for comfort. Now, in 5th edition, about a century has passed and Lantan is currently producing its own snaplock weapons, the precursor to the proper flintlock mechanism. Actually, I will just quote directly from the Forgotten Realms wiki page on the history and spread of firearms in the Forgotten Realms, and keep in mind, this is just the native production of them. There has always been firearms arriving on the planet from wild space, thanks to spelljamming visitors, and let's not forget wizards opening magical portals to distant worlds on a regular basis. The big Traki did it thousands and thousands of years ago, so firearms have been known for quite some time. But on Toril, firearms have never been extensively or even adequately researched and developed prior to the 14th century of the Dale Reckoning calendar, save for a few eccentric wizards. None of the major nations or organizations on the planet invested the time or money into producing firearms on a large scale until about 1246 DR, which marked the first recorded use of bombards by the island nation of Lantan. These bombards originally utilized gunpowder, as the deity Gond had yet to render the substance inert across the whole planet out of concern for his worshippers' safety. This event occurred in 1358 DR, so the entire planet just changed, when an avatar of Gond revealed to the Lantana people of Lantan how to make reasonably safe and accurate matchlock firearms that utilized a substance similar to the black powder gunpowder. Except it was grey. Only the faithful of Gond would know how to mix it correctly, and it could be rendered safe by suppressing the divine magic contained within it. The Avatar called it smoke powder. From that year onwards, the Lantana priests of Gond, mainly the specialty priests known as Gondsmen, began their tireless work to spread the use of firearms, shipping them to western ports, and by the year 1372 DR, firearms were available throughout Faerun, and many of Gond's clerics supported themselves financially by selling ammunition for smoke powder weapons. Many rulers at the time viewed the Church of Gond with ire for having introduced firearms to the continent, seeing the weapons as a threat to their authority, particularly the Kingdom of Cormyr, which had seen a frightening rise in the number of smoke powder weapons among the pirates of the Inner Sea, thanks to a portal between Lantan and the Pirate Isles providing a very lucrative trade highway for the Lantana. In the current year of the start of the 16th century, Lantan is a secretive and very busy nation that has expanded its influence and religious power considerably. Now, more advanced firearm technology is spreading fast across the Forgotten Realms, and both the weapons and their supplies are no longer that difficult to get hold of. Just pop into your local Gondite temple and pick up all the powder and ammunition you need. Take a look at their range of the latest self-igniting rifles. They are the latest thing, and just flying off the shelves in every merchant store in Sembia, Termish, Arm, and Kalimshar. Self-igniting refers to snaplock and flintlock technology. No self-respecting Lantana rock gnome leaves their home without one. A snaplock ignites the muzzle-loading weapon's powder by means of a bit of flint or pyrite attached to a spring-powered lever, which then strikes down on a piece of hardened steel. Struck sparks then light up the powder which is covered by that steel. Because this eliminates the need for a lit wick cord, these weapons are called self-igniting, and while more complicated and expensive to manufacture, they are very popular with usage spreading fast. Smoke powder can now be found far more widely across the realms, being produced in Lantan, Helrua, Thay, Waterdeep, Kalimport, Shaolung, Wa, and Arm. The spread of the new snaplock weapons is a lot faster now that they are much easier to restock with powder and shot. Still, there are plenty of matchlock weapons still around, and any treasure piles and dungeons that are more recent will only include the older matchlock weapon types, unless some more exotic or advanced weapons from off-world find themselves stashed away somewhere, which is fairly common. Most forms of armor a common soldier would wear, especially leather, light plate, and mail, have little resistance against the penetrating power of a bullet, and armor thick and rounded enough to deflect a bullet is both very heavy and not in common use. Enchantments to protect against bullets is also just generally good magic protection, so shield, that sort of thing. Anyway, so no special anti-bullet armor suits are liable to exist on Toril outside of the experimental pile in some armorer's laboratory workshop somewhere, but they wouldn't be for sale. The basic examples of black powder and more advanced weapons in the Dungeon Master's Guide and also on the D&D Beyond website really need a lot of expansion to include all the known and well-documented types found on the world of Toril. Also, yes, Ed Greenwood, creator of the Forgotten Realms, has confirmed via Twitter that gunpowder is non-functional across all of the planet, so Karatua and other more distant locations still need to manufacture and use the magically activated smoke powder, which means all the smoke powder guns of the Forgotten Realms are vulnerable and will not fire in an anti-magic field, such as the anti-magic cone of a beholder's large central eye. First off, what is a matchlock and snaplock, and how do we work out the usage of powder, its cost and transport and everything? We need to go over a basic glossary of terms, and here's where my script kind of turns into a magazine article, so I'm just going to be reading kind of the stats and stuff here and try not to make it too dry for you. So black powder and smoke powder standard charge is 1 ounce or 28 grams. A leather pouch contains 18 charges or 18 ounces and costs about 20 gold pieces. A waterproof horn, not necessarily made of horn, it's quite often metal, is 32 charges and it's about 2 pounds or 0.91 kilograms and costs 35 gold pieces. This will often have a little trigger dispenser so you can measure out exact amounts to go into your firing pan. The wooden travel keg is a smaller one and it's about 80 charges and it contains 6 pounds or 2.72 kilograms of powder and costs 80 gold pieces. And a wooden keg, the standard one, is 240 charges and the keg weighs about 20 pounds and contains 15 pounds or 6.8 kilograms of powder and costs 250 gold pieces. That's the standard that you'd find traveling around. In times of big supply, so it's coming from a manufacturer to be repackaged somewhere, or they're supplying cannons and bombards for castle installations, you'll have a 100-pound barrel. This has 16 100 charges, and the 120 pound barrel contains about 100 pounds or 45.35 kilograms of powder and costs about 1,660 gold pieces. And I don't have a damage listing for how much that would inflict when it went off. You can calculate it based on the charges and the amount of damage that a standard wooden keg would do. Black powder is made from a mixture of sulfur, charcoal, and saltpeter. The sulfur and carbon act as fuels, while the saltpeter is an oxidizer, so that's why they put saltpeter in the firing wicks. Gunpowder is a low explosive. It does not detonate, it just burns very quickly. The residue left over in the form of soot is corrosive to wrought iron and steel, so powder guns need regular, thorough cleaning. Smoke powder has a different, more complex formula, and the ratio of the mixture is far more precise. Plus, it needs to be blessed with a Gondite's priest's magic. The result is basically exactly the same with the properties of gunpowder, except it's more vulnerable to anti-magic. Oh yeah, and it also combusts with a deeper thumping sound, rather than the sharper crack of gunpowder. A matchlock mechanism was the first trigger developed and involved a simple system of touching a slow-burning match wick cord to a firing pan, sending fire down into the powder charge held under pressure in the barrel, firing out whatever is stuffed down the barrel along with it. The star wheel mechanism, these are pistols usually with a saw-edged firing mechanism and a trigger. The saw-edged wheel is wound up in a spring with a piece of either flint or pyrite held against it in a vise, so it operates much like a cigarette lighter. You can buy these 5 pound or 2.3 kilogram pistols in Skullport and on the Rock of Brow. Snaplock mechanisms first developed the primitive flintlock style trigger, also known as a self-igniting gun due to not needing a lit match to be maintained between shots. We're all fairly familiar with snaplock and flintlock rifles. Now we've got two weapon properties, loading and reload. Loading a weapon means loading one ammunition cartridge, and reload means you can restock a magazine or reload multiple shots. I know it's difficult, but that's the difference between loading and reload. So the general types of powder firearm are the bomb, which contains something like 10 charges of powder encased in a container, usually made of metal. A cast iron ball works well. There's the typical cartoon bomb, and a single hole allows a lighting of a fuse, with the length of the fuse allowing the bomb to be placed, dropped, fired, or thrown at the target area. A simple bomb can be thrown 60 feet, and each creature within 5 feet of its explosion must succeed on a DC 12 dexterity saving throw or take 3d6 fire damage. A pistol is a single shot weapon that requires only one hand to fire, costs around 250 gold pieces, it's around 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms, it's small and it's easy to conceal. A dragon is the origin of the dragoon name, and it refers to a cavalry pistol, a one-handed version of the blunderbuss. The thick barrel and the flared muzzle allow it to fire a scatter shot of all kinds of different ammunition, but it can also fire just regular ammunition. It does the same amount of damage as the pistol, but has a bit more accuracy over a short 30-foot range. Beyond that, it fires with disadvantage all the way out to its maximum range, and there's various types of those, and the stats don't really matter that much. The main difference was it was very popular because it was easier to reload that flared barrel on horseback. The Caviler is a version of the Arquebus. It's a 450 gold piece, 6 pound or 0.45 kilogram all metal stock version of an arquebus, and it can be used as a club. Now these are particularly popular in areas where there is a shortage of ammunition or powder, and the gun, rather than being completely useless in between reloads, can be used as a standard club. Now you'll notice in my chart down below accompanying this video, this article, that it's got the club property, which means it can be used as a simple club. Now you can add additional rules on there if you want to about the weapon being damaged if you, say, do too many critical misses with your club or too many critical hits. I don't know. It's up to you. Generally speaking, we don't damage items overly much in 5th edition. The Arquebus is the standard issue rifle that was around for a very long time, particularly with matchlocks and later with flintlocks adapted it. It covers a wide variety of the first long guns. First designed to hook over the and rest on battlements, so they were quite heavy, so you didn't just like hold this thing in your hands, you'd usually prop it up on a stock or a firing pole of some kind. Now this first it used the firing pan and the matchlock trigger, and then later used the snaplock trigger and then the flintlock. I don't think they used wheel lock arquebuses overly much. So yeah, All rifles derive from the original Arquebus design, which is entirely practical and logical one given its use. The most advanced and heavy versions of the weapon became more commonly known as muskets, and a common name for the standardized Arquebus design over the years was the Caviler, related to the word caliber, referring to the gun's exact actual barrel bore, which made it faster for soldiers to reload as the bullets fit the gun more easily. So they manufactured the bullets to fit a standard gun rather than the other way around. Previously, it was the soldier's task to trim their own bullets and to fit them in their own gun, or worse, make their own bullets out in the field from any available lead they could find. The Blunderbuss, of course, is a highly popular variation on Arquebus. It offers more versatility in what ammunition can be stuffed down that extra wide and heavy barrel. It's very fast to load. You can load it accurately on the fly, and basically it's a precursor to all modern shotguns. The musket is a much longer and heavier version of the Arquebus. It's more accurate over a longer range, basically a double-sized Arquebus intended for use on armored targets. And the word musket was eventually used to refer to most shoulder-firing rifles, but they were also known by their firing mechanism type. So a musket could either be a matchlock or a new snaplock or even a flintlock. They'll just refer it to that. And now they're spreading much more rapidly across Faerun. Out in wild space and beyond, musket refers to pretty much any front-loading rifle that is not a cannon or a pistol or a blunderbuss. It may simply be called a long rifle, and they're generally regarded to be primitive and not that reliable. A ribolt, or an organ gun, refers to many types of the church organ style loaded front-loading pipes that are stacked up next to each other. So it's an artillery piece, a mobile field weapon designed to fire many barrels at once, or a wide arc to mow down large groups of infantry or charging cavalry. Leonardo da Vinci actually had some designs for these types of primitive precursors to the modern machine gun, some of which had up to 50 barrels and stayed in use for a very long time. I've just given the stats, and it's burst fire, so you can play around with mechanics here and change it up depending on how big a rivolt you want to make. Yes, they were one-shot wonders that took a long time to reload, but they're also highly mobile and very effective at what they were designed to do. So you'd set it up essentially to mow down a bunch of troops when they weren't expecting it. The cannon uses gunpowder to propel heavy balls of cast iron through the air at destructive speeds. It has enormous range and power, but takes 3 actions to reload, aim, and fire the weapon. Plus, they're heavy, slow to transport, and difficult to keep supplied. The mortar is a short cannon designed to launch a lit bomb over a great distance to land on top of the enemy position. Like the cannon, it takes a team to load, aim, and fire the weapon, and take that whole team's to transport along with their explosive ammunition to wherever they go. Field mortars can't hit anything closer than 60 feet with any accuracy due to the firing arc, and they have a maximum range of 600 feet, and their bombs explode on an impact crater over a 20-foot area. The bombard is a siege weapon designed to bring down fortifications and ruin castle walls. The bombard is the largest cannon type, firing huge stone balls great distance with tremendous power. The impact of the shot not only does punishing bludgeoning damage and double that to objects and structures, it also hits any creatures within 30 feet of the impact with thunder damage, unless they make a saving throw. The largest bombard made on Earth, as far as I know, is Mons Meg, constructed of bands of iron surrounded by loops of iron all melded into a solid mass. The 6,000 kilogram barrel could only be moved 3 miles per day, and the charge of powder required to fire the 50 centimeter, 150 kilo muzzle loaded gunstones, a distance of nearly 2 miles, meant that the bombard could only be fired 8 to 10 times a day due to tremendous heat radiating from the metal. Still, it was actually used. It was constructed around 1457 and last used during the War of the Roses against Norham Castle in 1497. Except for a single ceremonial firing which ended up damaging it much too much to ever be fired again in 1681 when some royal wanted to have a birthday. It's now on display at Edinburgh Castle. So I've included a table for the stats for powder weapons. I'll put that in the description of the video below as well. In my next video in this series, I'll be exploring all the other more highly advanced weapons that can appear not just in the Forgotten Realms but anywhere in wild space and beyond, into the Dungeons & Dragons multiverse. Everything from black hole generators to 0-point energy cells. A complete guide to high technology arms and armor for 5th edition. My name is AJ Pickett. I make videos about D&D lore, but for now, as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.